Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday to all of you out in Facebook world. Glad to be here again for yesterday I said it was my 9th day, but I think yesterday was the 10th day of my 30-day Facebook Lives, which means today would be 11. We'll figure it out. We'll get there. Anyway, welcome to my Sunday edition. Bringing Billy along for the ride here today. I told you last Sunday I like to wear t-shirts on Sunday because really there's really no other time to wear your concert t-shirt, you know what I mean? And I'm really proud of this one. This was from last year, right? Yeah, last year. So speaking of Billy, this ties in well with our topic today. You wouldn't think that Billy Idol and emotional abuse, but let me tell you something. One of the most important parts about healing is getting in touch with the person you used to be before all the abuse started, right? Or parts of yourself. Now, we talked yesterday about how trauma changes you. Yes, it does. But there's also really important parts that you need to go back and find, right? Because, hi, Sarah, everybody. Glad you could join us today. And so, yeah, so these kind of things are important. So one, especially, for example, in my experience, what I went through, it wasn't just the marriage itself. Oh my gosh, no. I wish it would have ended there and I could have started my recovery and healing there, right? But then you have a horrible divorce, punishing divorce with a narcissist. Many of you know what that's like, or maybe you're in it right now. I'm so sorry. We will talk about that on another day. That'll be our topic. But then I also went through a couple of years of being stalked, because that's what narcissists love to do, and cyber stalked. So I was really antisocial. No, I wasn't antisocial. It wasn't like I was against it. I just couldn't be social because of my physical problems and issues. So last year was great. But last year, so when my best friend Mitz from high school is like, hey, Billy Idol's coming near where she lives, and how about you fly out here? And then my other girlfriend from high school, she met us out there. Hello, Julie. Hello, Mitzi, if you're watching. Love you gals so much. So this was super fun for me. This was, you'd think, oh, what's the big deal? So you met your girlfriends and went to a concert. Who cares? Well, I care. I'll tell you why I cared. Because after you live for decades in the darkness and you've isolated yourself and you've been isolated from all that you knew before and from good people in your life, like my high school friends who were healthy people. So that's why they couldn't be in the darkness with me. I had to keep them out, right? So inviting them back in and going to see Billy Idol, who, there's nothing wrong to say about Billy Idol. There's just nothing. Who me and Mitz used to, adore in high school, still do. And I think I told you last Sunday when I was talking about Def Leppard, who I also saw in concert recently with high school friends, is that I have terrible eyesight. So I was, we're far back enough where I don't know how old Billy Idol is, but he looked like he was the same age as when, we would watch him in high school. So he was all of that. This was super, super important for me to go do something fun like this. Now, people on the outside of any experience with a narcissist, they don't understand this, right? But I know you all understand this, where it's like there can be years where you're just in a constant state of misery, sadness. That doesn't mean that you're not still going out and putting on the charade and smiling or faking the smile or whatever and trying, and getting out, whatever, showing your face. It's not like you're hiding out in the dungeon for a couple of years, but your underlying feeling is just that of sadness, depression, feeling crazy, misery, all of that. So when you live so long in that place, Going to a Billy Idol concert with your best friends from high school, that's huge, right? That's huge. That's way better than drugs. That's way better. That's better than any medication you could take. It's like the best thing. Okay, I'm glad we started there. For those of you who are new to watching me, I'm Susanna. I am a narcissist recovery coach, abuse recovery coach, helping one woman at a time get over her abusive narcissistic ex for good, forever, for always, and ever and ever and ever. Like Taylor Swift sings, we're never, ever, ever getting back together. Glad. I just need to make that clear every time, right? Because we're not doing that anymore. We're done. And this is day, I think, 11. We're, that doesn't matter, but we're still going. So we're only like a third of the way there in the 30 days. So I'm glad for all of you new people who are here. This is a safe place. There's no judgment, no blame, no guilt, self-blame, self-guilt, none of that here. No victim blaming allowed, none, not on ourselves, not on somebody else, not having it. All right, so this is a heavy subject. Well, everything we talk about here is heavy, right? I am coming at it from a place of, I have finally, after all this hard work, because it takes hard work to get to the other side, right? I have owned my place in the light. That's why I can talk about these things freely. So speaking of Billy Idol, true story, me and my best friend Mitz from high school, when we were in high school, we both made out and got a hickey from his drummer. True story. Yeah. There's a lot more details to it, but basically we both, not at the same time, calm down. Not at the same time, that'd be weird. But we decided that we had come upon this grand opportunity, so we just shared. We're in 11th grade. Anyway, we both got hickeys. It was very cool. It wasn't really Billy Idol's drummer. And we knew that, but we didn't care because he had a mohawk and he was from out of town. Okay, so now that we've lightened the mood, now we're going to go dive deep into this heavy topic of emotional abuse. I love that everybody's sharing their own story. And again, if you have any questions, I tell no lies. I'm an open book when it comes to this. So today when I posted that I was going to have this, I also shared a piece I wrote, which I'll share again here in the comments if some of you didn't get a chance to see it. So I'll just put it in there. This is a piece I wrote a while ago about exactly what we're talking about today, is the physical effects of emotional abuse. Yes, so for anybody who is on the outside and has, is still in that stereotype of what abuse looks like, right? The stereotype is that, and that's why it's called domestic violence, right? Because we think that abuse has violence attached, physical violence, because there's absolutely violence, right? I am a strong believer that silence is violence, right? The silent treatment is violent because of what it does to your inside. So there is the stereotype out there that this violence in an abusive relationship is only physical. We're blowing that out of the water because that's the furthest thing from the truth. It's understandable that, because it's called domestic violence. And so I'm going to share a little bit about what happened to me. I'd love to hear what, oh, good to see you, Kirsten, Sarah, everybody, Susan, everybody, that's awesome. So I'm going to share a little bit about what I went through so that, again, I told you this yesterday, the reason that I do this is I don't want your pity. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. There's nothing to feel sorry for here because me and Billy are doing awesome. Okay. I share my story for you, because when I was back in the darkness and somebody else who had already made it to the light, when I remember women would share their story, and it was something I could cling to, right? It was a hope that came into the darkness of my light. It was a light that I was like, oh, even if I didn't know how to do anything about it yet, even though I didn't have certain answers, it was just like that first life preserver being thrown out, right? That you grab onto because you're so desperate. So that's why I do it, to, when I share my story, is to, it's for those of you who can relate. So to validate that you're not alone in this. Okay. I'm just make sure I always scroll the comments, because, everyone, I just keep missing questions sometimes. So Natalie is sharing that she has a chronic illness due to the abuse she suffered. I've heard this over and over and over again. Every single woman I've ever worked with has physical effects to some degree or another. I will tell you that the physical effects started about the last 3-ish, 2 really years of my marriage. I'm sure there were smaller, things earlier that I just chalked up to something else or excused away or whatever else. But when I look back, the most severe effects were in the last couple of years, especially the last 2 years. And then they got a little bit better when I escaped, because as many victims crossing over to survivors will tell you, when you first escape, there is there's a euphoria there. It's kind of a false sense of safety and success, because it doesn't last, right? I've never talked to anybody where that lasts, but in the beginning, it's kind of like, this is how I felt, is that I had been in solitary confinement and had not seen the light for years and years and years. So when that door was opened and I stepped out into the sunlight, and I actually literally did, because I came back to Arizona, right? Which we need to change the motto to Arizona is the Sunshine State, because we have all the sunshine. But anyway, so I literally made that move, right, into the sunshine. But that first, probably anywhere from 4 to 6 months, there was a euphoria there. There was a freedom there, where the physical effects, they didn't go away, but they sort of tapered off. Kind of like, remember I said yesterday, when we're in labor, okay? Well, for those of you who've never been in labor, when you're in labor, it's just all pain. It's not a matter of days where you don't have pain. You always have pain. Or in labor, it's hours. Some women have days. God, that'd be awful. Anyway, so it's not a matter of whether we don't have pain. It's just a matter of we go through periods where it's not as bad, and then we go through periods. It's like peaks and valleys, right? So there was pain, but I will say, because of that initial freedom I felt, oh, that was sweet. It was sweet. What I felt, it was like, because you have to understand, I had been coming back and forth to Arizona because my mom lived here and I bring my kids here and so forth. Arizona, Wyoming, a lot, right? Especially in the winter. Like, who doesn't want to go to Arizona and leave Wyoming in the winter? Or at least I did. And it got so bad at the end that when I would leave, sometimes I'd come down by myself with the kids. It got so bad that I would get on the plane to go home. And especially in the winter, oh my God, that was like going back into the jail cell. And I would get on the plane, and as soon as I was flying out of Phoenix, the desert, looking at, I would just start crying, and I would feel sick, and I felt like something was closing in on me. And the whole flight, I'm just like, my stomach starts hurting, and I just feel like I'm going back into that solitary confinement, right? So when I left and I knew I didn't have to go back there anymore. Oh God, that was great. That was great. I still am riding that high, not to the extent I was back then because it was so new, but I would get up early every single morning, every single day for years. And I'd walk outside and I would just breathe the freedom because it smelled like freedom. I can't explain it. It smelled like jasmine and orange trees and freedom. Every single day, and just be grateful for like every little thing that I would do, right? So this lasted. Then unfortunately, you know, that was the lull in the pain, and then it all went to shit again when when I filed for divorce, and then I found out that I was being followed, stalked, cyber stalked, all of that. Topic for another day. We'll get to it, promise, because narcissists love to stalk you. Crazy. Okay. So these physical effects, and I want to share that, you know, in my marriage, there was, okay, I have a hard time saying there was no physical abuse, but I'm going to say, and maybe I'll get to a place where I will say there was 99% of the time there was no physical abuse, because I'm still, to be honest, I'm still sort of, I'm probably normalizing some of the physical things that happened in the marriage. I will admit that. Normalizing meaning that I play it down, right? Because it wasn't like a full-on, you know, he never hit me or shoved me or pushed me up against what, nothing like that. You know, but there were physical incidences where a couple times where I feared for my life. It didn't happen that often, so I'm going to put that out there. But I know a lot of you out there, and you know, a lot of the women I work with is there is that physical abuse component. But I want to focus today on, in the absence of physical abuse, there's still so much physical damage that you go through in emotional abuse, okay? And it makes perfect sense. If you think of, you know, the main reason for heart attacks is stress, right? So that makes perfect sense that we're going to feel it physically when our bodies are under, when our mind, body, heart, and soul is under attack by this person that we love and trust. That's the kicker, okay? We're not being abused by a stranger. We're not being abused by, you know, somebody outside of our circle that we're not invested in. That's what makes the abuse so damaging, is because it's coming from the person that you love with all your heart, that you trust implicitly, that you may or may not have had children with, right? I mean, how intimate is that? Built your life together, perhaps spent decades with this person. That's why it's so harmful, so damaging. I'm going to read you what my definition, this took me a while to come up with this, but this explains an emotionally abusive relationship perfectly. Okay. Being in an emotionally abusive relationship feels like being sucker punched. Then looking around for the one you love to help you get up, but discovering he was the one who made you hit the ground in the first place. It's a relationship of surprises, of trick doors, and funhouse mirrors, in a circus that you don't remember buying a ticket to, but then waking up inside of one day and realizing that the one you love is the ringmaster. That's what it feels like, okay? That's what it felt like to me. I remember thinking often that this was all a game or a show of some sort that I just woke up and I found myself in one day, right? And I just don't remember participating in my entrance into that. Okay, that's the crazy making part. Okay. Um, there are all sorts of physical effects. I noticed, like Beth saying, she had chronic PTSD. She was sick a lot during the relationship. That was me, especially the last couple of years. And then again after, in the divorce and stuff like that. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't even know when I was in the marriage. I've said this often, and victims of emotional abuse, this is very common, is that we don't know we're victims until we get out. Or if we, at the tail end, when we find somebody who's maybe an expert, or somebody comes along with telling the truth, and but we don't know this. It's too hard to figure that stuff out when you're in it, right? Because you're so, by this time, by the last couple of years of my marriage, I had already been with this man for 15, 16 years. I was such a wreck. I was such a wreck. I would just, especially like the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, it was all I could do, because I had 2 kids at home. My oldest had just left for college, which was horrible for me. It was great for him. I was happy for him, but it was really hard because he was the only one I had to talk to, because my other kids were small. And so it was all I could do just to make it from sunup until sundown, because the physical effects were so debilitating for me that I couldn't do much. I spoke about this yesterday a little. I shared a little of, some of the physical effects were like, I remember my first panic attack. I didn't know it was a panic attack because I didn't know what a panic attack or anxiety attack, I didn't know what that was. I thought only crazy women had those. So then when I had one, that proved it, right? I was crazy. That proved it. That was proof. I was crazy. I thought I was crazy. He said I was crazy. That was it. That was the nail in the coffin. Panic anxiety attacks, for all of you ladies who have experienced these, oh my God, they're the worst, because they're so tricky. You feel like you're having a heart attack. That's what it felt like to me. And again, at this same time, so here's the real me behind closed doors, at home, by myself, hiding out, whatever else, and suffering physically and emotionally. And then me outside, going along with the charade. I was a holistic health coach, helping other people be healthy, right? I was a professional ballroom and Latin dancer, teacher, choreographer, all of that, doing shows, performing, stuff like that. So here's this outside, what looks like this, early 40s, healthy woman. There wasn't a healthy part about me. So I would go through these, I had 2 panic attacks that left me in the hospital. Mainly the first one was really because I didn't know I'd never experienced anything like this in my life. I thought I was having a heart attack. It wasn't just, for women, we all know, right, that a heart attack is not just a pain in your heart. That doesn't happen with women. It's all sorts of weird shit that starts happening. Like, you get nauseous, your shoulder blades start hurting, your fingers go numb, your toes start to tingle, weird, your stomach hurts, you get bloated, whatever. It's weird shit that starts going on, but it's not normal, right? It's not normal. So I thought I was having a heart attack and went to the hospital, of course, where the male doctor is like, there's nothing wrong with you. Go home. Okay, so I did go home that first time. And you know what I was met with? With him, I was met with a lecture of how because I had been out of town when this panic attack happened. I was at a writer's conference, and it happened when I was sitting in the airport waiting to board the plane. And all of a sudden, this wave of like nausea and panic and I can't feel my fingers, and my back is really hurting, and I'm just feeling sick, right? And so they start to board the plane. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be okay. I'm okay. But then my mind starts going crazy because I'm like, it's not getting any better. I try to then I start getting dizzy, like right before you're gonna faint, you see stars. And it happened to be a Sunday. So the medical things, people in the airport were not there, or they had like a medical station, but nobody was there. So I start stumbling because they're boarding the plane. I'm like, shit, I need some help because I'm going to pass out. So I start stumbling down the corridor there trying to look for somebody, and I see a security, but I can't see very well because my vision has gone blurry. And I'm like, okay, I'm either going to pass out or I'm going to throw up, one of these soon. So I grab onto this security guard and like, I need help. Anyway, I don't remember a whole lot of what happened in that instant. I do remember that the next thing I know, there's a medic there who's taking my blood pressure, and which is, I guess, sky high, because they're like, we need to get you to the hospital. So they, and I'm like, well, I'm thinking of my husband at the time, this whole time, that he's gonna be so pissed. I'm like, I can't. I mean, yes, if you want to take me to the hospital, that's fine, because I don't want to die, but I can take a cab. There was no Uber back then when this happened. I'll take a cab. And the medic's like, no, you're not taking it. We need to take you to the hospital, like right now. Okay. Everything turned out fine. I actually, because I was in San Francisco at the time, this is just a side note how crazy shit happens in life. They took me to the hospital, and once I came to and I was like, okay, I'm feeling better now, whatever else, they gave me something in an IV. I don't know what it was. I didn't know what was going on with me. I had no control. I was just a mess. So I came to, and I was talking to the doctor, and I'm like, what hospital am I in? And he said I was in the Burlingame Hospital. I'm like, oh, and I grabbed him. I'm like, no shit, because that's where I was born. I was born in that Burlingame Hospital. Like we moved away from San Francisco when I was like 2 years old, whatever. How crazy is that? I end up in the same hospital. So I go home, fly home. I had to call him from the hospital and say, I had to rebook my flight. I had to change my flight because of what happened, So I go home. About a month later, we get the bill because we had like catastrophic insurance. So like if one of us got hit by a bus, I guess we'd have part of that paid for. But nothing like this, right? Everything came out of pocket. So got the bill. Oh, God, I still remember that, having to call him and tell him that I got the bill, right? And then I just had a lecture for like an hour of how financially irresponsible I was for going to the hospital, for taking an ambulance, and whatever else. So the reason that I'm sharing that story with you is that's crucial to understand the state I was living in, where what would a normal, healthy person do? Yes, Annette, the lectures, okay, we know. But if I was with a normal, healthy, loving person, right? Like all of you are out there, what would they have done instead? Like I had a serious thing happen. I didn't know it was, right? So this is what narcissists do. It's just added on, added on, added on. So in my weakest moments, and this is exactly what narcissists do, in your weakest moments, they pile more shit on to make you weaker, right? That's why I'm sharing the detail of not just that I had a panic attack, but this is what I'm greeted with. So the next time that happened, which was, I don't know, maybe a year later or something like that, I don't remember. Same thing. I thought I was going to have a heart attack, and it comes out of the blue. That's why it's so scary, because, and it's just unlike anything I had been ever felt. So went to the hospital again, but this time I called, because this time I was home when this happened, and I called him and said, because I had called him initially and said, hey, can you call, there was a friend of ours who was a doctor. I said, can you please ask him to call me because I'm really not feeling well and I'm scared. And again, it was a weekend. I don't know why I always have panic attacks on weekends or on Sundays, but there it is. So I said, please, could you have him call me? I just want to talk to him. Just, I was hoping maybe he could make me feel better. Because I was scared to death. I thought that, the headline, as I say in the piece that I wrote, I thought the headline the next day was going to be like, perfectly healthy 42-year-old woman dies of massive heart attack. That's where I thought I was. So I asked my husband at the time, can you please have the doctor call me, whatever else. So my husband at the time calls me back and says, well, he said, our doctor friend, right? Because for some reason he couldn't call me directly. He says, you're fine. I said, I'm not fine. And so he said, just give it a couple hours, go drink some water, go lay down, whatever. And I'm like, okay, tried that. Hour later, I am still feeling this, still feeling nauseous, hurting, back's killing me. I have this sharp pain in my shoulder blades, and I'm sweating, and I'm like, okay, screw it. So I took myself to the hospital. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done this. I told him that I was going to the hospital. I said, please don't go. Please don't go. Please, 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 please don't go. You don't have to go, please. Because he was at work, and I'm like, oh God, not another lecture of how he interrupted his work day. Please, please don't go. I get to the hospital. He's there in the waiting room, right? I feel horrible. I go, I'm filling out form, whatever else. Anyway, turns out same thing as before. Everything's fine with me. But this time he's sitting there at my bedside when the doctor comes in. The doctor and him talk over me about me. I'm sitting there. I say close to nothing. The doctor is telling him she's fine, there's nothing wrong, all her vitals are good, everything's good. And then and my husband at the time he's all very, he goes into his sympathetic and where he seems like he's really concerned, and what a guy, what a lucky girl I am to have a husband like that, right? He was super good at that. So he asked the doctor, he's like, Doc, do you think it might be all in her head? And the doctor said something to the effect of, only she could answer that, but her, there's nothing wrong that I can see. That's how we were left. These are the things that I experienced as far as those were the biggest parts of the physical effects that I experienced, okay? I'm just reading some of your comments. Yeah, the finances. We're going to talk about that too. Financial abuse. That's a topic. We're going to talk about that because this plays into that too, right? That's financial abuse when it's like they're not worried about your health. They're worried about the bill of the ambulance, whatever. Some of the other physical effects that were just slow and steady and that just became worse as the months and then the year went on. This is at the end of the marriage. I had chronic stomach problems, and this, I hear this from a lot of women too, is the umbrella term is fibromyalgia, right? Where it's just mysterious pains that you're feeling that don't have, whether it's in your legs or your back or your arms or your whatever, just weird things that are hurting on you that really you can't go to a doctor's office and get measured. You can't get it tested. Like there's really no, you can't make sense of it. You can't make medical sense of it. So that was something else. But for me, the main thing was my stomach problems and just constantly feeling nauseated everywhere I went. So this was at home. I had to be super careful of, and this is This is going on for a super long time, people. So imagine the stress that's taking on my body, right? It got so bad that I didn't go anywhere without water. I still don't, because old habits die hard. Like, I won't go anywhere without a bottle of water, anywhere. I don't even care if I'm going out for 20 minutes. I won't go anywhere without a bottle of water. And that's because back then I also wouldn't go anywhere without my bottle of Pepto-Bismol. I had one by my bed. I had one in my purse. I had one in my car. I had one in the kitchen drawer. And there was probably that last year where I was popping about 6 to 10 a day because I just was constantly in pain and feeling like I was going to throw up. So that was super fun. And so coming out of it, so these are some of these are the physical effects that, again, how can you measure this? And I would go to my gynecologist, I'd go to my regular doctor. We did live in a very small town, so unfortunately there weren't a whole lot of options. You know, when I came to Arizona, then I was able to explore and find alternative ways to heal. And we can talk about that too on another day, of part of the healing process that I'll talk about. But at the time I was in a small town, so, you know, my gynecologist, I would go to her because I'm like, okay, maybe, because I'm not kidding. Some lunches, because I always was at home, kids were in school, so I was always home by myself during the week. And I would always eat at home, you know, like 98% of the time, to save money. But sometimes I would eat a fucking grape and my stomach would blow up. And I'm like, okay, I have ovarian cancer now. Great. And this is at the time where I told you a few days ago that I had been choking down my feelings, right? I wasn't talking anymore. I was more and more isolated. And as a writer, I wasn't writing, or what I was writing was not the truth. So I had been choking down all this pain and suffering for so long. Also, I had become more and more silent in the marriage, more and more quiet. So I also thought I was going to get throat cancer from shoving all that. So it's like, cool, I'm going to have throat cancer and ovarian cancer. Great. And a heart attack. This is, I'm just reading a comment. These are the effects from, and it makes sense when you're in it with, when you're in an abusive relationship, an emotionally abusive relationship with a narcissism in particular, is there's all this, I said it yesterday, it's just such a mind fuck. So with gaslighting and smear campaigns and bait and switch and hoovering and love bombing, and it's just this constant barrage on your senses, on just everything, right? So of course it's going to trickle down and affect everything in your body, right? The most common thing that people get diagnosed with is complex PTSD. Why it's called complex is because it's more complex than just like one event. You know, for example, like soldiers will have PTSD from events that happened while they were in combat, or, you know, whatever. So complex PTSD, just so we're, you know, again, shedding light on this stuff so we can make the stereotypes and the myths go away. So complex PTSD is still the post-traumatic stress disorder, but it's because of a complex amount of stress that you've been subjected to, right? Abuse, emotional abuse. I was diagnosed with that, and anxiety, and which is crazy because this is when I was 46. that I was actually diagnosed. I mean, obviously I had it for a couple years before that. But the anxiety part was the crazy thing for me to accept, because that was not my personality. Like, I'm like, I always saw anxiety as, I don't know, like that people are, you know, that you're anxious and you're stressed and you're just, and I was never like that. Like, my personality is like that. How could I have anxiety? Because I'm just a super chill person. I like to be chill. It doesn't mean I always am because of my circumstances, but at my foundation, I'm a really chill person. So anxiety, let's talk about that too, because anxiety is not what, you know, always what you think it is, right? So anxiety can manifest in very weird ways. So the way that it manifested with me is that every single night, and this was after I got out of the marriage, and during the time that I was being stalked and having my whole life ripped from me again. So anxiety with me looked like, again, lots of stomach aches. And I would just have these moments of dread wash over me. It usually happened in the evening. And I had isolated myself again to a point where I didn't get out that much, except like to go shopping. But even the times that I would go out, I couldn't wait to get back home. There was like a timer in my head where it's like, okay, you got to get back home to the safe place, right? And I didn't know what it was at the time. I couldn't make sense of it, but there was a feeling of dread that would just wash over me, and it made me, I'm gonna sneeze. It made me really scared. It was, I don't know how else to explain it. Maybe some of you have some better explanations for what anxiety feels like, but to me, it felt like just a wash of dread. Like, I didn't know, like something was going to happen. Something bad was going to happen. I didn't know what it was. So my heart would race. I would start sweating, that kind of stuff. Okay, so Bonnie is saying that actually there are tests to determine fibromyalgia. The problem is many medical professionals aren't properly educated. Gotcha. Gotcha. So that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that. That's super good to know. So this goes back to finding, it's kind of like when you go find a therapist, or when you go find a lawyer, if you're going to divorce a narcissist, or same thing when you're finding a doctor when it comes to this shit. You got to find people, they don't all know they don't all know, right? I mean, the doctors I went to, they didn't know. My gynecologist constantly wanted to put me on antidepressants. And I'm like, I'm not depressed. I'm not depressed. There's something else going on. Like, I knew that. I knew that. I knew I wasn't suffering from depression. I also knew I didn't want to be, you know, drugged up, because I was already feeling like there was a part of me that was not kind of asleep, you know, like I used the word emotional coma I put myself into. So I didn't want drugs to like put me further under. So it's super, super important to find, you know, go to doctor after. That's what I had to do. But I found one. So let's, I went overtime again. I think this is just going to be a thing now where I shouldn't even say 30 minutes. We're going to go longer. Okay. Okay, so Beth is saying, I asked about anxiety. Anxiety for her feels like her life's about to fall apart and that she couldn't pinpoint the fear. Yeah, that's exactly what I felt like. It doesn't make any sense, and it's kind of irrational and it's illogical, but the fear is there that it's like doom and gloom, something bad is going to happen. And yes, Carla's saying that her anxiety still struggle leaving her house. And also that she was not that way before. I know. It's crazy. This is what we talked about yesterday, how trauma changes us, right? I was never this way before. I mean, I had always been a healthy girl. What I mean, you know, I never had any major issues. I mean, I had been in the hospital, give birth, but apart from that, I didn't really have any problems. I mean, the most medication I took was an ibuprofen once in a while, but I couldn't even really take too much of those because I'm just really sensitive to medication. So, um, so let's just wrap this up by saying that all these physical effects of emotional abuse, no matter what they are, and it's varied and the list is long, right? I just mentioned, you know, in the time that I had today, I mentioned the things that I struggled with, but obviously it goes far past this, with sometimes debilitating effects on our bodies. You know, stuff that we live with for the rest of our life. So I can't urge you enough when it comes, just think of doctors or getting medical help, or solutions to your medical issues, right? Because I don't care if a doctor tells you that, you know, oh, everything's fine, you're fine. No, if you're not fine, right? You know there's something going on, obviously, just like I did, even though I had doctors telling me, to my, husband at the time's great applause, that it was all in my head, right? Screw that. If somebody is telling you that, go somewhere else. Go find another doctor. My search took me, thankfully, I moved back to Arizona and I had a whole world open up as far as possibilities, because I used to, the small town I lived in was just super limited as to where I could go. So I can't emphasize that enough. And what help can look like, really open your mind to the possibilities. You know, I found help for my physical issues due to the emotional abuse that I had suffered and was still suffering during the time I was feeling this stuff. I found help in healing at a Buddhist temple where I learned visual healing. I went to a Pima medicine woman. I did. I'm not laughing. I mean, but it's just, it's crazy how you just it's like, no, just go there. Go find, then I finally found a naturopath doctor. Too bad none of this is covered by our insurance, right? Which it should be, because this is what's helping us. But go far and wide to find what helps you. And if it's not helping you, just don't stop there. If somebody's telling you you're fine, whatever, and trying to put up a wall in front of you, no. Or a door, if somebody closes a door, kick the damn door open. I can't tell you how many doors I have kicked open. Not only with medical, but in the family court system and lawyers, and just keep kicking doors open until you find what helps you. And again, this can take a variety of forms, like it did with me. I will tell you that because I went to these, and the naturopath doctor that I found on my first appointment. Okay, first let me tell you what I was used to. So my doctor under my insurance, I went to her and I tried to tell her about, because this was at the time that I was being stalked and all of that. And I had 3 lawyers in 3 different states. And it was a shit show, right? So I went to my insurance prescribed doctor. I wasn't in there for 5 minutes. I barely got the very basics of, the anxiety that I was feeling, that I had been diagnosed with PTSD. It wasn't 5 minutes, and she was trying to prescribe me Lexapro. I didn't do it because She gave me the, when she gave me the prescription, she also gave me the 2 pages of side effects and what could happen. And I'm like, night seizures? Suicidal thought? No, thank you. So went from her, found a naturopath doctor. On that first visit, I had just come in, signed in my name, right? The doctor comes out to get me. You know what she does? She hugs me. She gives me a hug. She doesn't shake my hand. She gives me a hug and introduces herself. I got tears in my eyes, right? I'm like, oh my God, my Jesus, right? She's my angel. So, but that took years. It took years for me to find her. And it's because just keep looking. People are out there to help you, right? There's people who know, there's professionals, there's medical people, therapists, psychologists. They're out there who can help you for your specific situation. You just have to weed out the others, right? Okay. I'm just reading. Yes, like Annette says, as abuse survivors, one of the hardest things to do is learn how to be an advocate for yourself, especially with doctors and lawyers. So hard. We're going to talk about that when we talk about divorcing a narcissist. Oh, God, you want to talk about pure hell. Yes, because you have to understand when you've been a victim of emotional abuse, you've been emotionally depleted, you've been beaten down, you've been conditioned and brainwashed and all of that. So it's really difficult to step into that place of power, because when we advocate for ourselves, we're empowering ourselves to do something about it, right? And that's hard. That's hard. But keep searching. You know, whatever you're physically suffering with, there is help out there. I promise. I found it, but it was after a long search. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up today. I really appreciate all of you being here talking about this sensitive topic. Speaking of help, if any of you would like to chat with me more, hop on a call with me, I do offer complimentary, I'm putting the link in right now. I do offer complimentary calls for you, just so we can chat and you can talk to somebody who has been there, done that, which is me, and I'm on the other side. And so I have my PhD in hindsight and perspective. You know, I know what it takes. I know what it is to be there in the darkness, and I know what it takes to get out of the darkness fully and claim your space in the light. So if you're somewhere along that journey and you'd like me to hold your hand as you go through it, I'm here for you. So also, Chris Godinez and Chris is on right now. I'm going to put her link in for her Sunday show. You can catch that right now. She talks about all things narcissist, and she is just awesome. Awesome. So try to catch her show today. And then she and I travel around the country. I thought I had that link pulled up. We travel around the country and talk to groups of people who about all things narcissist. And it's great if you want to come to, you know, just to a safe space and be able to talk with me and Chris about your, you know, situation and what you're struggling with. It's just a great anonymous, you know, safe place to come. We're going to be in Reno on September 14th. So I just put the Eventbrite in. I know because we limited only to just a small handful of people because we want to keep it intimate and so we can chat with all of you, right? It's a great couple of hours we spend. It's just great. The people are great. Everybody's great. So if you're in Reno or in the area, please come. but get your tickets now. I think there are tickets left. I think there may be a couple tickets left. So, okay, for all of you, I always end this way. For all of you still struggling, still suffering, still in the darkness, or maybe just have a toe still stuck in it somewhere along your recovery and healing journey, I'm sending you lots of love and strength and the hope that it will get better. There is a beautiful life that you deserve waiting for you out there to come and be a part of it. And on that recovery and healing journey, all of you, remember, get back in touch with the girl, right? Do what you need to do. Go see Billy if it makes you feel better, right? Like it did me. Do what you need to do and to get back in touch with that girl. She's still in there. Oh, speaking of that girl, you want a copy of my free book? It's just on ebook now. I have a big surprise coming this week. Not going to tell you which day yet, but I will announce it ahead of time. Getting the hard copies, and there's going to be a thing that I'm going to do with some of those hard copies. So we sign them and send them out with lots of love. I'll tell you about that this coming week. I'll post it on my Facebook page. So if we're not friends, send me a friend request so that you get my notifications. Okay, but you can go to my website if you want a free copy of the ebook to read on your computer or on Kindle. Go to SuzannaQuintana.com. It's on my Facebook page too. The link is on. And Billy and I, we're wishing you all love, and I hope the rest of your Sunday is awesome. Okay, with a rebel yell, I'm going to leave y'all today, and I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, ciao.